Welcome back to For the Love of Humanity, Season 3, Episode 7, if you're counting. This episode is about the work and the practice of the work. So, this episode, I'm excited to talk about because things have just been landing deeper and deeper. In the last episode, the special episode for the leap year, I talked about how when I'm learning something, I seem to get a ton of experiences come into my realm of experience, and I am guided by my intuition, my inner teacher, my inner knowing, my higher self, however you want to call it, to walk through those experiences and really get the most out of the learning, right? And for me, there are different levels. There's like level 1, which is the circumstance. Level 2, how I feel about the circumstance and what that brings up in me. Level 3, the programming and beliefs that must be there for allow the circumstance to feel like a thing in me. Level 4, what's beyond the program and what's greater stability that I can access. Level 5, what's between me and that greater stability. So when I want that greater stability or I see that greater experience, what are the things that now flood in that sort of reconfirm the past experiences or reconfirm the beliefs I held in the past, that sort of provide a fear in that moment of like, we can't go higher, we can't go to the next experience, it's not possible, or oh gosh, that'd be really hard, that'd be really tricky, right? And that's level 5, whatever. Level 6 is like practicing, showing up, doing the work, practicing. That's where the pivots happen, the shifts happen. Level 7 is feeling the new way, experiencing in it, having a bit of a tumble from the new way. And then again, the same old narrative might come up again, being like, see, it's not permanent. It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't attainable. One more time, swatting that away, perhaps. Level 8, maybe leveling out with it, being able to feel like the impermanence doesn't mean it's not reality. And to me, level 8 is like the figure 8, the infinity symbol, and sort of like volleying back and forth between those two sides, feeling practice, but from a level of empowerment. So the practice doesn't feel like it's slipping through your grips, and it doesn't mean that it's not there, and it doesn't mean these big, horrible things. And then level 9 is like embodying, radiating, getting the expansion, getting the gold, feeling like, okay, this is a thing, and this is how I choose to live my life. And sure, there are going to be things that come up that maybe challenge it every once in a while, or something will be shown to me that's like, oh, well, this is one area that it wasn't applied to, so we can use it here and expand in this area too, whatever that may be. But to me, it feels like levels, learning happens on levels, and you can stop at any one of those levels. And it's interesting because I feel that there are pitfalls at a lot of those levels where you can sort of be baited off track. So imagine, like, what's a video game? Is it Donkey Kong that was kind of like that, where you'd try to climb to the top and you'd have to watch out for like all the little things he was throwing, those barrels. And then at the same time, like there was like a pitfall at every level. Anyway, who cares? Take the video game analogy if it works for you. But it feels as though there were moments where I could sort of snakes and ladders it. I could stop and be like, yeah, I'm good here. Yeah, I've done the work. Look at me. Figured it out. Yeah, good. Got boundaries. Maybe not look at the resentment that's behind the boundary and not reach for higher. So that being said, I've talked about doing the work. I've talked about it in terms of broader context. I've talked about it archetypally. I've been banging on about it for a couple years now, but I want to talk about a living example, like a real life example, and walk you through my process. And I want to say everybody's process of alchemy, everyday alchemy, is going to be unique to them. And every situation might call for a different combination or a different experience. So my best advice would be release the expectations and the control around it, and just do what you know to do to support yourself and keep expanding open. So for me, everyday alchemy is about taking a situation that feels like shit, that feels contracted, that feels yucky, that feels, I don't want to do this, I don't want to be here, I don't want to show up, that sort of takes you out of your strength and feeling strong and feeling like you're moving forward with something. It's the moments of contraction. It's taking that contracted experience, that loop, that perfectionism, that whatever it is, like the stinky, stuck pattern, and elevating it into what's possible. So you kind of go through the stinky, stuck shit, and then you move into your own stuff. And then you somehow find a bit of neutrality, and that neutrality and love helps you expand a bit more. And then you can see a bit more. And then you can see a bit more. As I said, you start to see the patterns and the beliefs. And then you see a bit more. And you become so open that the thing itself that triggered the expansion or triggered the reflection or triggered the disengage of the contraction, the thing itself that triggered all this is like a dilation, right? So you're contracted and now you've got to become relaxed enough to dilate and open up and see more and bring in more of that higher version of you, that resourced, loving, expand the version of you you like to be, the version of you that feels so good. And I know some of you might be like, well, sometimes it definitely feels good to be the villain and it definitely feels good to be the bitch sometimes. But I would again argue that that's probably not your favorite feeling. That's just your favorite feeling when you're in the low of lows or when you're in the gutty getters. So that feeling of dilation, to open to see more possibilities, comes after the relaxation, comes after being neutral, comes when you have a wider vantage point, when your peripheral opens up, you can see more, when you can release expectation. And eventually what ends up happening is you see possibility. Eventually you're thankful for the experience that triggered the contraction, because it's also the way that you got to the dilation, and it's also the way you got to your expansion, and it freed some more of your crap up for you to feel lighter, freer, on your way again. And to me, that's gold. When I can get back to that freedom perspective and I can be less and less triggered by things in my environment and look more and more at how I can get more of myself, I can stretch more of myself, I can expand more of myself, I can become more resilient, I can feel my feet on either side of that figure eight and just find myself balancing like that, like a 9-bot. The more I can feel like that, that's what I love. And that's worth it to me. That's the gold. So that's the point of spiritual alchemy for me. That's the point of using my spirituality to lead me through, using my highest knowing of what feels good, what is good, what's good for all, like really using my virtues to lead me through an experience so that I can gain more of myself, gain more of that virtuous self, because the virtuous self to me just feels good. It feels loving. And I'm not making anything beyond that or underneath that experience wrong. That's what I've identified. And I know that I have the choice over and over again to shoot for that, because that's the lived experience. That's the lived experience in general. But that's what has been proven to me over and over and over again to make my life feel rich and worthy and meaningful. And it was already worthy, arguably, when we just arrived. Like, this whole experience is worthy. Like, perhaps that's the biggest joke at the end of it. It was all this experience. It was all for the plot. Literally, we were just here to have the experience and love one another. And so what does that highest form look like for you? So spiritual alchemy for me is taking something that feels very contracted, condemned, shitty, bad, like non-reverent, irreverent, when it feels like I'm divesting from my life, and elevate that into a feeling of like, I'm here, I'm fully embodied, I want to invest, I want to go for the fullness, I want to go for the gold. So that gold standard is my spiritual alchemy, my feminine alchemy that's intuitively led. I'm not following like an ancient guidebook. I understand, I've read esoterica, I get the framework of alchemy. It's a masculine interpretation of what I perceive to be a very feminine, innate experience. The feminine, the intuitive, knows how to do these things in the dark, knows how to do these things by feel, by memory, by knowing. It's not really, I guess it's less about memory and feel. It's more just deep knowing. The feminine already does the decomposing and the rebirthing of the new. So feminine alchemy, everyday alchemy, spiritual alchemy, however you want to call it, that feels good for you. This is the practice. This is the devotion. And I've spent some time recently, like really looking at what you focus on, what you put your energy towards, what you invest in. You gain mastery, but also it is your focus and your investment. So what are the ways in which I can focus on personal development, personal growth, spiritual growth, investment into humanity in a way that does not feel unsustainable, in a way that feels enjoyable, in a way that's like, shoot, I've made this my focus and now I'm constantly seeing the negative everywhere. I don't want that either. So for me, it's been, okay, well, again, refining and reframing what's my aim. So that's the, now you've got the background on this expose, on this exploration of the great work, right? And I talk about how there's an ability to have grace and sustainability of this and within this. And part of that has been for me releasing the control. And releasing control has been a recurring theme for me. Capricorn Sun conjunct Lilith. That's a thing. Like, I also have all my personal planets in Aquarius, my Mars, my Mercury, Venus in Aquarius. So for me, releasing control, my IC is Virgo. Releasing control is, you know, something that has been a theme and it's been pervasive. And there's at times where I've seen it, and at other times I've been like, completely not seeing it. It's been within the shadows. It's been deep in the shadows, and it's felt like an impulse. But I understand where that impulse came from. The impulse to control was an impulse for safety. So it's not wrong. It's not bad, but I'm so excited to see where I can get my little grips off of that, where I can quit white knuckling it and pry every little finger off the thing I'm holding so tight. So I've been able to move into this easy temperament around learning and around shadow work. And what felt like a dark night of the soul, what felt like very necessary, hot, pursuant exploration, like, oh my God, I got to do this. This is like, the pain is too much. I have to deal with this, is now become, oh, okay, shadow work. There's patterns here. I see it. I can come up for air. It's not like a blind experience of like, walking over hot coals blind, never knowing you were being led to hot coals, and like everything just feels so horrible and you're blindfolded. It doesn't feel like that anymore. It feels like I can go through the experiences of shadow work without making it wrong, without making it suffering. That's the biggest thing. It doesn't feel like suffering. I'm not suffering through shadow work. It more so now feels like edging, like I'm at the edges of every new expansion and experience, like I'm edging and rebirthing. And when something feels like I'm contracting, it's okay. There's time and space to look at it. There's no immediate threat to my life because I'm looking at something or investigating something within me, a feeling, a pattern, a thought, a memory. It doesn't have to feel like, oh, I don't like the feeling of this. It's got to stop because I don't like the feeling of it, but I've got to move forward because I don't like the feeling of it. And the focus is on, I don't like the feeling of it. It's now like, isn't that neat? Neato, fantastic. Okay. So the example from today is very interesting because it was at first triggering for me. And I looked at a lot of my stuff, and I will preface this with, like, I'm human. I'm still human. I still make mistakes. I err. I attempt to forgive. I forgive. I think I do a good job, actually. I keep one door open on the possibility that I could be wrong, that I could have forgotten something, that I could have erred, because that's the reality. And at this point, I've not like ascended into some sort of glorious light body like I riseth. I move the stone in front of my tomb and I riseth and I'm glowing in front of you and there's not a human being left here. No, that's not necessarily the case. I still have human experiences. However, I get to feel really excited about the fact that the stuff that used to mess me up, the messy traits that I had, the ways in which I self-condemned, the ways in which I was like feverish about perfection, like just it's got to be perfect because then I won't feel pain, or then I won't feel like horrible experiences. Then I'll be able to have only the good things and whatever, right? That has subsided. And the highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low, but I feel really balanced and harmonized, and it's a wonderful place to be. And the forgiveness is crazy. Like every time you can let go of the clamp of perfectionism, it's like, oof, all right, excellent, perfect, perfect, nice. So I took something today from like stinky shit to open-hearted. And trust me, there are opportunities in this point where I wasn't going to be open-hearted, or like where I had the you sure you want to be open-hearted again, kind of thing. And it was like, yeah, of course, that's the way I want to be. Obviously, everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes. I've clearly made a mistake, and the other person has made a mistake, perhaps. Who knows? So, okay, there's something that happened that bothered me. But for me, it was a very, um, like my mistake just felt like, oh, like if somebody else had made that mistake, it would have been like, yeah, yeah, whatever, like just a misunderstanding. Like, oh, hey, do you have this thing? No, I don't think I have the thing. Oh, because I don't have it here. I think you might have it. Could you just check? Um, I know that it's late, not now. You don't have to check now, but like in the morning, could you potentially check? Because I need it for this person. This person needs this thing. And then it was, I could tell there was a trigger. There was a trigger that had happened. It had made the person feel blame. It had made the first person feel as though they weren't believed necessarily. And so I had to look at, okay, this is obviously triggering me because I'm feeling semi-defensive, because I'm feeling like, well, it's not a big deal. Why has this become dramatic? This is the easy thing to get through. It's an easy thing to navigate. And so when I retexted this person in the morning, I was kind of like, hey, problem solved. It was a totally other thing I was talking about, found it, we're good. And basically I got the information that the person felt, upset and felt, as though they'd been put out a little bit by my ask to have a look. And for me at first, I was like, come on, like that's really, we're going to make a big deal about that. And then I realized everybody's entitled to their feelings and their experience. So I then, and this is not the first time I've done this, this has now become my methodology for going through triggers. I make a list of the stuff that my ego wants to say. I make a list of the things that quote unquote piss me off about the situation. And I like some of the things where there's no forgiveness here, like this is such a menial mistake, and you want to act victimized by the fact that you were asked something. And I was like, well, hang on, they said that it wasn't there, but you thought, well, maybe it was because it wasn't here. And I was like, yeah, and I kept the door open to the fact that I could be wrong. It might not be there. I continuously did say that. So what's the problem? Well, for me, it felt like, well, the problem is that this person isn't hearing that I had humility. I had room for my own error. I just simply asked and I gave grace, like, it doesn't have to be right now. It could be later. So what am I annoyed with? I'm annoyed with the person claiming that they're being victimized by my error. That's frustrating because that doesn't feel solid or real to me. Okay. And again, looking at the fact that regardless of whether it's feels solid or like real to me, that's not really on me. That's not. And so my impulse could be like, that's your trigger, you deal with it. Right. And in the world of learning boundaries, sometimes that's where we stop. We just stop at like, you're triggered. I can tell this isn't mine. I clearly didn't do anything to make you feel victimized. You feel victimized. That's yours to deal with. Right. And we could stop there. But I just think that's a disservice in relationship. And it also, again, I'm checking, I'm looking in my insides. Does that feed my ego at all? Does it feed my ego to say, oh, cool, all this uncomfortable feeling is all yours, not mine? If I'm being truthful, it wasn't. It wasn't just all theirs and not mine, because I was feeling triggered. I was feeling frustrated. So clearly I was still harboring feelings somewhere, probably not even connected to this particular experience, some relational resentment residue just sitting there. And you know me, I'm looking to alchemize. I want to take the stuff, I want to make the gold from it. That's my motivation. And so the next sort of thing was like, how did I respond? Well, I responded with, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That was not my intent for you to feel that way. And okay, done. Then I sit there and I think, good, you didn't respond with attitude. You didn't respond with judgment. You just responded with sorry. That wasn't my intent. Um, that's it. Okay, you think you're at that level. And then you're like, did I respond in that way so my hands were clean? Clean hands, clean answer. You can't get any dirt on me. I said the right thing. I apologized. You got your apology. Okay. Is there any residue there? So I'm still journaling it out. Okay. So did I do the thing because I wanted the thing to be, I wanted a good experience, or did I do the thing because I wanted to be clear, a clear conscience? Well, I can't condemn myself. Wanting to have a clear conscience is also a virtue, but is there something beyond that too? Is there a way that I can look at this and say, okay, but do I care? Do I genuinely care about the other person's feelings? Because I'm a caring person. I like being a caring person. I like having an open heart. And that's where the open heartedness came in, is like my heart open. Or am I like, I said the thing, I said the sorry. That's not my intent. I cleared the air. I clarified. Okay, so the air's clear. But what's the next feeling? Well, this is why things feel dramatic. This is why I don't enjoy, like, if a little thing like this elicits this response, our relationship has some tension and some resentment because something this small should not bring out the drama. And I don't want to invest in more of this. Okay, so my heart's not open. I'm not looking to invest. There is a boundary here. I feel righteous in my boundary. I talk maybe to another person, because for me, again, I mentioned this in another episode, my feelings I can extrovert easily and see. My thoughts are sometimes, they fly under the radar. It's like they happen so fast. But anyway, I intuit my thoughts. So for me, to get my thoughts out in journaling has been the saving grace of my ability to work through my stuff, to see my edges. So being able to journal, just splat it all on the page. And then I go underneath, I leave room, and then I go underneath and do like a back and forth, like a little self therapy, right? Sorry, I'm drinking some hot chocolate. So I have this situation. I see that my heart's not necessarily open. I see that I'm looking to divest energy. I see that there's still some hurt here. So I start asking myself, what's the hurt around this? Why don't you want to keep an open heart? Why do you want to divest? Why do you want to say you're sorry, do the right thing, and then still close up and move away? And I had to look at the parts of it where we're like, I don't know that it's going to change. I think the relationship is probably going to feel like this going forward anyway. I don't want to continue to get into situations that feel like this. I don't want to be in situations where it feels like if I make an error and think something is somewhere and I ask in a polite way and I leave the door open for myself being wrong and I apologize and the person still wants to have a victim experience around it, or the person still wants to say, yeah, well, I was hurt by it, and make it feel like it's bigger than it is. Okay, I'm still sort of back at the first one. And I'm feeling like I'm attaching it to the future. I'm attaching it to, do I have the energy bandwidth? Is this a sustainable relationship pattern that I want to invest in? So there's a part of me that still thinks that it affects me deep enough that it's going to be a future commitment or experience. Okay, so I'm still working on that. I'm working through that. I'm feeling that feeling. I'm wanting to, so anyway, my husband comes up. I kind of mention what's going on, and he says, well, this is part of this person's character to act this way. This is something that's been demonstrated repeatedly, or it's been demonstrated in other scenarios. My husband's he's interested in quick sort of like evaluating a situation, being pragmatic and moving on. So for him, he wants to say, this is like, oh, well, you know this about this person. You know, this is the way they see you, or this is the way they act with you. Okay. But part of me is like, I'm still not necessarily satisfied there either, because that doesn't feel clear, neutral. I'm not feeling any better about the situation. And I don't feel like at this point, I want a solution that feels good for both parties. I just want to be away from it. I just want to put it at a distance. So I keep looking around at this scenario, and I keep rooting around and digging around and asking questions like of myself about, you know, what story am I caught in? Is this related to my past? Does this have any relationship to the way I see myself? Does this have anything that would trigger my perfectionist tendencies? Does this have, am I worthy of this? Like what, when I'm caught in my story, I don't feel very worthy of a higher solution. When I'm caught in my story, I feel like there's, some messiness to it. So like, how can I start tweezing this thing out, and how can I feel open to the peripheral? And then I allow myself to get still. I allow myself to let a lot of all of the expectations, if possible, go. I let the future response go. That worry about the future response is not, not relevant in this moment. But I can have compassion for the aspect of me that's like, oh God, like if this is the way it's going to be, that experience, right? If this is the way it's going to be, I just asking a simple thing or doing that, you know what I mean? It's going back into my own experience of being victimized by a situation that I have not redefined, or I have not found my neutrality around. Am I a victim? No, I don't want to see myself as a victim. I don't want to see myself as being victimized by this. So how do I clear it? And again, I'm being very vague because this isn't something that I'm looking to give ultimate details to, but at the same time, I'm hoping to show you my process and how I go through this. And the things that are triggering for me likely aren't the same things that are triggering for you. And that's the crazy thing about triggers, is like, it is such a complex connection of thoughts, emotions, and already solidified, cemented belief systems. So we have no idea when somebody's upset with us what we're actually bumping into or what we're actually triggering for them. They might not even be aware of all of the ways in which the scenario has triggered them, especially if self-awareness of some aspects are too painful to look at or too hard to reach or too confusing. Sometimes we have triggers and blind spots that we have no idea are there. As I said earlier, like the levels in which I'm looking to control my scenario so I don't have to be inconvenienced by messy emotions or uncomfortable situations or even like emergency situations or horrible, like, do you know what I mean? Like thinking that I can control things to that level. And I understood that cognitively, but it's not that I saw all the ways in which it was having its way with my life. So understanding that this person may not even see these aspects of why it bothered them so much. But from my own intuition, what I gathered was they felt inconvenienced, they felt blamed, they felt the rush of a situation that they felt responsible for. And in my clarifying statement, that's not what I was meaning to do. And I didn't have compassion at the moment of like, why does it have to be so big? Can it just be like, I thought it was there, it wasn't there. Thank you very much for looking. And let's not pretend this thing inconvenienced you out the wazoo when it didn't. And so that's my like, that was my harsher perspective. That's the part of me that still is obviously triggered by something about the scenario because my compassion was fairly low. And my will to, have peace around the situation was also low. I was just willing to like toss it. And again, I don't know if that's the Capricorn sun, or whether that's the Sagittarius moon conjunct Jupiter. But I don't know if it's those two things that sort of have me, when I've decided something is draining of life force, I divest. And that's something I'm working on and looking at, because my egoic nature could have me divest too early. My egoic nature could have me divest in experiences that would lead to a full and rich life. So I'm not here to have a life of convenience entirely, but I am here to experience enjoyment, harmony, happiness, progression, like my virtues, my high standards, my gold standards. I'm here to experience those as much as possible. So when a situation is not hitting at that level, it's my responsibility or my gift to be able to look at that and make my way through it. Now, we can't always control how things are received or perceived. That's not on our part, but we continue to elevate our actions. And again, not in perfection. It's not necessarily about perfection. It's about empowered feeling around something. It's about not being dragged and not feeling as though you're a victim of a situation that doesn't need to be. Do I need to bring this into my future with me? How far do I want to bring this scenario and this experience into my future? How much more do I want to engage in this? And is there more truth to feel? How much more truthful can I feel around this? Can I reach for more truth? Can I reach for more expansion? Actually, can this thing be the catalyst in my own expansion to see my own edges? Is this an edge pusher for me? Not necessarily deep shadow work, not traumatizing experience, not us versus them fight, but is this an opportunity for me to see more edges? And when I see more edges, I'm freer. I'm more free to keep moving and keep going. And I build resilience and I build credibility in my ability to handle emotions when they come up. And then little emotions that feel a little bit messy or a little bit petty or a little bit whatever, inconvenient, don't take me out. These things don't feel big. They just feel part of the human experience that I signed up to have when I was born. So for me, it's an opportunity, and that's how I get there. And so sometimes I need to reflect on the opposite. I also blow it out to like, how much would I be willing to invest in keeping this pattern? Like, is this a pattern that I'm allowing? I'm keeping this pattern alive. Am I energizing this pattern? Like, what in me is voting on this continuing in my life? And what on me is like cut it out, like cut, done, bye, harsh, cold boundary too. So walking that line of like keeping an open heart, because I know that once I've like sliced off a boundary or like slammed a door shut, my heart, that's the door to my heart. That's not necessarily a door to someone's face, right? So, and again, like I use this terminology not for this specific example. This really does not warrant a slam door face thing. That's not what I'm saying or projecting. But what I'm saying is, in our own pattern of how we look at confrontation, difficult discussion, frustration, misperception, um, accident, error, wrongness, forgetfulness, mistake. Well, what's our pattern for that? Some things take us from 0 to 100 real quick. Some things take us into victim mentality. I know there have been times, for instance, where my husband has apologized to me for something, and for whatever reason, I was not ready to receive the apology, and I wanted to be in a victim energy for a little while longer. I was like, yeah, like that type of energy back to him. Yeah, it was inconvenient. So like, again, I have compassion. Look at the opposite. Reflect on the opposite. Look at how have I done this in my life and what drove me to it? And was I fully conscious when I acted that way? Right? Opening up my compassion, seeing this from another perspective, not being victimized by the experience, blowing it out so I can get some breathing room in it. Right? So is there something, can I see how this is showing me something? Am I ready to forgive or let go? So I feel like I've been working on that. But it's easier when you just take a moment to reach for that higher experience. It's like reaching for the invisible hand of your higher self to like pull you up to a higher vantage on their cloud and point like, see, you've had this experience before. They had this kind of day. This is the thing that's happening. This is where the trigger's coming from, and it's triggering your thing over here. Isn't that interesting? Do you want all that, or do you want to let that go? Would you feel better without that in your experience? Can we wipe it clean? Can we let the water run clear? Obviously, yes. But if you try to rush the process, or if you try to act like you're there when you're not there, this is kind of where like fake it till you make it doesn't really work. You have to be willing to let it unfold. And the more willing you are, this is the crazy thing about it. The more you release contraction and you dilate and you open and you relax and you open, you don't just see that scenario. You see your triggers. In this specific scenario, saw all the way back to a rejection wound, completely all the way back to where it was hitting that little nerve and that tooth. I was like, oh, okay. And once I saw that, part of me was like, fudge, does this wound have to be triggered every time that something feels like this in this experience or in this way with this type of person, with this figure, with this archetype? Does it always have to hit that one? No, because the more I relaxed around it, the more I saw, oh, there's some more scaffolding holding this whole thing in place. There's some more around this. That rejection wound was happening because I held expectations. I held preconceptions that the future was also held in that locked position. And I wasn't letting go of whatever happens. I was like, well, it's probably going to be like this because this person is not going to see this and they're not going to see me as this. And this is a typical blah, 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 whatever I wanted to add to it. I was very aware in that moment as I dilated and dilated and dilated that I was holding the pattern in place down the road. Like I was still holding the pattern in place by my expectation on an energetic level. And when something's happening on an energetic level, we are smart, right? We know this. It bleeds into the material. So whether we see it or not, those energetic roots are informing our actions in the present and predicting our actions for the future. So unless we go in and like really have respect for the complexity of this system, because when you program it for good, when you program it consciously for the things that you want in life, it is an elegant system that can work so good for you. If you have programmed in there the opposite of rejection, what do you think you're naturally energetically vibing out and attracting into your world? What are you naturally acting in alignment with, in congruence with, in accordance with? And this is why, laws of attraction, universal laws of attraction, laws of vibration, laws of consequence, cause and effect, like it's all basically the same thing. We're holding a mirror up, and what's reflected back to you from that mirror reflection is what you're doing. Like, and I know that's hard to hear, but the more we relax around that, the more we dilate, the more we're shown that reflection pool and the ripple effect of it. So, these are the things I know for sure. When I settle down, when I relax, when I dilate, I see the edges, I see the patterns, I see the belief systems. I get to pull myself up to a higher vantage, and I see what's unseen. And I see what I'm holding on to, what I was not in favor of. And then I'm grateful for this. That's where the gratitude comes in. It's not like, oh, I was grateful somebody talked to me in a way that I didn't like this morning. On one level, yeah, I am grateful for that, because it showed me where I was getting triggered. And the trigger led me all the way back to a root that I thought that I dissolved, but still had a little bit of life in it. I was still giving it life somewhere. And oh my God, when I traced that root to the forward projection, that's where I was giving it life. It's crazy when you think about time not being linear, because it's almost like your higher self is taking you by the hand, pulling you up on the cloud, showing you, while you hold this feeling right here in your present moment, you're projecting all the way into the future. And I've got to deal with it because I'm your higher self from the future. And I'm dealing with the fact that you didn't make peace with this and you didn't let it go here. And you think you dissolved it by going back and visiting the past and releasing it and saying you forgave. But your expectation for the future was still holding it in place there. So technically, you're still in a holding pattern of it. Oh, cool. Thank you. So I also see this as like being grateful for the circumstance, because it gave me my freedom and it gave me more of my future. It allowed more of my higher future self to come into the present moment, because that higher future self is living in resourced expansion. They don't want these petty limitations. I don't even want them. I'm looking to release them. But what I've realized now is that releasing them with a whip is quite different to releasing them with a helping hand. And so I also look at this as like, I can be in a state that's not like F you boundary by. It can be like, or I don't know, right? Freedom. But I can know that I don't have to be perfect, that I can figure it out, that relationships aren't minefields. Relationships, you can leave space and time and room for relationships, and you can trust that you can navigate relationships well. My sun conjunct Lilith is in my 7th house. This is the house of relationships. I have Pluto at 29 degrees of my Libra in my 4th house. This is justice, relationships, like home life. Like these are my lessons for this lifetime. And I want to address them elegantly. I want to make mastery of a situation that felt confusing and a situation that I didn't seem to be able to figure out. And that's for me. I'm not even making any promises to other people. I'm just making the promise to myself that I'm going to continue to try. I'm going to continue to be better. My Sagittarius moon archer's bow is aimed at a life I enjoy, sovereignty, aspiration, ascension, like always making a situation better. The alchemy, the everyday alchemy of gaining the gold where I thought there was only shit or coal. Do you know? And again, dramatic language not necessarily applied to this specific scenario, but dramatic language so you understand nonetheless, whatever situation you're feeling that feels like that, there's the potential for better. And now that I don't have to be perfect, I can be great and I can know that I'm good. So, from another way of visualizing this for me, anyways, like going inside my ball, like, so if you think about some sort of like futuristic, modern, like hamster ball, but it's just a light grid. It's not, it's just a blueprint light grid. So you go into like your meditation space and you go inside this like ball, and it's really just you. And it's like a hologram of the globe around you. And you're sort of looking around and zeroing in on stuff and zeroing in on memories or thoughts or beliefs. And you can see how it's all interconnected in this web. And you can see your belief systems and you get this 360 view. Okay, so this doesn't feel good to me, but here's where I've done it to somebody else. And here's in my past where it got imprinted. And here's in my future where I keep thinking it's going to happen. And here's the way in which somebody else is mirroring that to me. And I'm like irritated by them. And here's the way that I'm completely oblivious to my experiences around it. And here's where I've been overanalyzing and beating myself up over it. And here's where I've been holding perfectionism so tightly. And here's where I've got another holding pattern. Oops, over here, this whole light grid has gone down. There's no energy and life to it. Okay, well, I don't want to do that. There's like no circulation going to it. My God, it's numb. So being able to be inside that ball, not the oh my God part. I'm very calm in there actually. But what's interesting is when I dilate and have the room to have these experiences shown to me, it's like they come in flashes at first. And I can just get a hint of like, this is your perfectionism. You can let that go now. That person doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. Neither of you have to be perfect. Isn't that freeing? Doesn't that feel really nice? Cognitively, I knew this. I've known this for so long. Do not get discouraged if you keep having the scenario pop up. If you think, yeah, I did that 2-hour meditation once and cried my face off and then my perfectionism was gone, or so I thought. It might not be. You might be still energizing it in some sort of way to your future, which requires your intuition and your spirit and your like higher self to sort of take you by the hand and show you where you might be still keeping it alive. You might be still feeding it by a pattern that you didn't even realize was feeding it. So basically, we don't give life the things we don't want to keep going. And if we've decided we're not giving life to all of these things on a whim, our life is going to reflect back. You've cut off all your circulation, all your relationships, or you've cut off all your circulation to these areas of your life here. You've cut off circulation to your ambition because you were scared of failing. You've cut off, so you'll be shown. You'll be shown. You just have to chill, relax, dilate, open that root, open that crown, let the light flood you. Okay, so anyway, I got to see my thoughts, my shadow programs, my shadow walls, my limitations, my restrictions, my shadow behind the light. Like that whole clarifying apology, that was a great apology. I'm being clear. I'm setting the intention. Excellent. It was a good apology. I could have stopped there. As I said, it feels like there's like new devil, new level, or new level, new devil. I could have stopped it. I gave a good apology. I cared. I clarified. I gave a good apology. Now I'm putting it down. But for me, I was like, there are still lingering feelings here. I have the energy today. I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep looking as to what's going on. And the things that I'm projecting in this, like I want space from this because, and this is like when you start looking at attachment styles too, this is the convergence of avoidant attachment, anxious avoidant attachment. So I'm going to avoid this scenario now, but there's still residue. So what's the residue? Well, that's for me to find out. That's for me to deal with. That's for me to look at. And I had to ask myself, do I want a resolution? And part of me was like, no, because I'd rather not be surprised by this happening again. No, because then I would have to accept that this is the way things are in the future. Like this is just the way it's going to be. No, because then I don't want to, get into another engaging experience like this. Or no, because there's a part of me that hopes that things will be different, but I just know that they won't be. So like all of that mess was mine. And that person doesn't deserve any of that mess on them. I'm not saying mess is in self-deprecating. I'm just saying that tangled little heap of string And I had to just be honest. Yeah, I would love it to change. I would love it to not feel like that. I would love for scenarios to be like just easy and not trigger those things. But at the same time, obviously there was a trigger on both ends for a reason. And I get to make gold from my triggers. I just do. That's the way I've decided I'm doing life. I get to use everyday alchemy. I get to make better choices. I get to make better investments. And when I say this, it's not to trigger like I get to make better investments, pulling my investment from there, putting it over here. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I get to make better investments with my belief system, how I see things, how I hold people to a standard of perfection, how I hold myself to a standard of perfection, what that even looks like. Where is that still alive in my system? I get to use this and go on a little bit of an exploration and expose, not because I'm a glutton for punishment and I want to stay in the healing journey and feel like, oh God, I'm forever healing. This is always the thing. No, but because now this feels like edging. This feels like pushing my edges. This felt like I can do this. This feels like it's going to bring me something. Intuitively, I smell gold in the air when I see a situation like this. And so I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm also not looking, though, to create extra dramatic situations because I'm like, ooh, I need to mine some gold. I want some gold. I'm craving some gold. So I better create a dramatic situation so suddenly I can get some gold from it. That's not, I mean, if that were a pattern that would be happening and we'd be becoming conscious with it. We'd be reckoning with that experience. So I've walked the lines. I know what they feel like. And that's the beauty of self-awareness, is because you start to not be able to lie to yourself. And you can't get mad at yourself because lying to yourself was not clear, like lying to another person. Some people actually aren't even clear about lying to another person. So it's like becoming clear on when you lie to yourself for protectionism, for self-preservation. And I don't think it's the same type of lie, but it's allowing yourself to believe an untruth because you haven't experienced the robust feeling of truth, resonance, long enough that you don't know what it's such a fleeting feeling sometimes that maybe it's really hard to hold beliefs and perspectives up to the light of truth because the light of truth seems very foggy for some of us, or for just some areas. Like in some areas, truth is real clear, right? And then in other areas, when it just comes to this sort of little thing in this type of relationship or in this type of, thing we enjoy doing that we probably want to give up, and we know on some level we could give up, but we're telling ourselves we can't give it up. Like areas like that, truth can feel really slippery. And that's where justification sort of comes in. So I did this like back and forth where I made a point. So this is what I thought was going on. This person acts ... and ... over these types of things. Therefore, not doing the work. I am doing the work. Ooh, that was big for me to look at. So wait a minute. I can judge people now for doing the work. Like this is another pitfall when you start doing spiritual work, is the spiritual ego. And people talk about this. It's just, are you aware of it? And I see mine. I know when I start judging people on their progress, there's something in that for me. But I'm not an asshole. Like I get it could come across as assholish, but I'm not an asshole. So why is this bothering me that I feel like I've done the work? And I remember in my teens, I'd always get caught in lies. Like I just I couldn't carry a lie very long. And I would be like, but these other people get to lie and they don't get found out and it's not fair. Like I just used to have a frustration around that, or other people get away with this type of stuff. One, I understand. I had a level of integrity inside that was not going to allow me to get rid of that or to get away with it. My higher self has been with me my whole life. And whether I was aware of it or not, it was always giving tells to me or to the other people around to create situations where I would have to come to terms with the lie. And I got real aware of being truthful. And I would say, a very truthful kid. And then I found that in some instances, telling the truth bothered people or hurt people. So then I started to feel what manipulating lies felt like a little bit. And even in our society, it's widely accepted. Like, you don't just say that to someone, even if it is true. Like, yeah. And also there's nuance. And so truth is a very nuanced experience. However, to do this work, you got to understand what truth feels like for you. And you got to really know what integrity feels like, and then know that you're going to be tested on it. And there's going to be deeper levels of truth that you're always finding out about yourself. So even when you think you've got the monopoly on truth and you figured out truth and everybody else must be wrong because you're true and you know truth, there's going to be a few times that you're shown like, okay, I could be more truthful with myself here. I could be more truthful in this scenario. This isn't me being ultimately truthful, or this is me being a little shady. Why am I upset that, I'm doing the work and this person doesn't, they're getting away with this and I'm not? And that's like not being seen, not being appreciated, not being like, there's all little things that are connected to this. Why am I bothering? Well, you're bothering because you want the goodness of it. So is this showing you that in the beginning, maybe you only bothered so that you could have the good label? Are you only concerned about the good label, or are you concerned about the feeling of it being good and feeling of it being truthful and knowing that you feel clear? So looking at that, like, am I fully aware of all my stuff? And what else? What else? And then at certain points, I had to ask these questions where, okay, but what if it didn't change? What if that was just it and that was the truth you had to accept? Then what? Okay. And how would it affect me? Okay. And what if the person didn't know? Okay. So do I want this person to change? What if the situation wasn't like this and this person was, didn't feel, was like, okay, thank you. Part of me is like, yeah, that would be incredible. That's all I want. And then the part of me was like, well, then I wouldn't be able to hold up my righteousness. How interesting. And that's the deepest truth I got to as well. Like, deeper one about the rejection. I just want this experience to not trigger rejection or what's still left in my rejection. And then the self-rejection or the needing an external validation of progress. Oh, I want this person to be their best version, not being not their best version so that I can have a comparison or I can be righteous in the way I've been treated or vindicated. Oh my God, my victim level or layer that deep, like, oof. And so it seems like this takes a long time. I'm explaining it in depth because I want you to feel through the scenario or the way in which I do the work. And I don't stop. I do the work. I work through it. I see the stuff that people are ashamed to look at. I want to look at the thing because I don't want the thing to be a hindrance or a thorn anymore. And I want to be free to enjoy relationships. And I want to be free to feel resilient. I want to be free to feel free. I want to just not just know that I'm free, not just know that I'm forgiven, and not just know that I'm worthy. I want to feel those things. And so what's in me that's in the way of me feeling those things? What's in the way of me actually feeling that now that I don't have to be perfect, I can be great. And I can know that I am good deep down. I have the verse, be still and know that I am God. This was something that I loved as a verse. And I realized after my grandma passed, it was one of her favorite verses because I'd read at her funeral or at her service. And this was something that was added into it. And then I found out later. And then after she passed, I'd been given a few of her things and this verse was in a box. And so anyway, for me, I'm not overly affiliated with one religion or another. I'm sure you probably know this at this point, but for whatever reason, this one really feels like it hits my heart. And for me, it's a gateway to unity. So be still and know that I am God. It's a gateway to unity, to knowing that you are that creator, that you are with that creator, that you are creating, and you have the freedom to do so. You have to find your path there. You have to find your wiggle way through there. You have to dilate enough for that reality to be felt, not just thought, but to be known. The difference between thinking and knowing is huge. And feeling is somewhere in the middle. So this micro occurrence brought this macro reminder that all is right now. The proof that opportunity is always there and that all will be infinitely expanding and that I can choose my belief. So there, as I said, there was a number of pitfalls that I could have fallen in, like I'm neutral, maybe, or I don't care, maybe. Oh, these are just my boundaries. This person is this. Why did I even let it get to me was the first question that turned it back inside, though. So make your list of things that bother you, make your list of steps. And then once you start asking yourself, why did it even get to me? Why do I care? What does this mean for me? What is here for me? What does this confirm or deny for me? How is this a gift for me? What self-forgiveness can be had? What forgiveness of other can be had? Is this an opportunity to confirm or affirm both of our humanity? Is this a reminder that to err is human and to forgive is divine? It's a deeper dive into like, what is divine forgiveness? What does that mean for me? What does forgiveness mean for me? And for me, forgiveness has the quality of reverence, of gratitude, of seeing the God in this other person. Even if this other person may not see it in themselves, or even if this person isn't aware of how grand they are, like a sleeping giant, does it have compassion? Do I have compassion for the fact that in this moment they are feeling taxed and frustrated and victimized? And that's not the state that God exists in. I mean, God's in everything, obviously, but God is not bound by the human feelings of victimization. So when somebody is feeling victimized, they're not feeling their most highest resourced self. They're not feeling expanded and safe and full of potential. They're not. It's just we all can recognize that when we are in a feeling of contraction or victimization or any of the feelings that feel stuck and low and lifeless or full of heat and stuck in frustration, that's not our most expanded self. So can I have compassion? Can this affirm that if I can have compassion for this person, I can have compassion for myself, I can have compassion for anybody? Actually, my compassion for humans is not predicated on my experience with those humans. I can have it whenever I want. Holy shit. I'm having a universal experience. I get to feel what it feels like to have unconditional love in the moment that I look at all this. Shoot, what a gift. This whole scenario brought this gift to me. So this is the way my mind sort of pedals through it. And of course, I can keep an open heart for potential, as I would hope to have done for myself. Why would I want to close the door on someone becoming their best self? Why? I would hope to God that somebody would have the humanity for me becoming my best self. And not only that, when I think of who I am as a person and how I want people to know me and how I want to know myself and how I want to feel about myself, I want to feel like I'm the person who keeps an open heart and an open mind for the potential. That's my whole podcast is about this, for the love of humanity, for seeing that we have the potential to hold greater depths of compassion for one another. Of course, shit, this whole thing brought me right back around to me, the higher version of me, the reverent version of me, the heart burst open version of me. So then I ask myself, is there love here? Yes. Is there more compassion? Yes. Does this feel spacious, clear, and complete? Yes. But if I stopped in the earlier stages, I wouldn't have necessarily felt complete or spacious. So this is why I'm saying it takes some truth telling in yourself to seek out where you might still be feeling a contraction, a frustration, or resentment, something, right? What's this connected to? Because you know that if you invest in this internally in yourself, this investment will pay off, and it pays off in gold. So it's always worth it. So some of the tools that I used through this scenario was, is this mine? This is shortcut energetically, feels lighter when it's no, and it feels heavier when it's a yes. So who is this for? Who is this? What can I, like, is this mine? Does this feel like my energy or is this somebody else's energy? But it gets confusing because I believe that sometimes things trigger us because there is something for us. So is the direct energy mine? Maybe not. Maybe I'm feeling somebody else's tension, but there's some reason why it came into my experience today, and just have a double check. And then does the water run clear for this? For now, maybe. And if we're questioning, like, yeah, it feels clear right now, but there's a part of me, this could be a future, this could happen in the future, then that's a future worry. In which case, it can be looked at as, okay, is this still connected to a past story? Can I release this person for the future, from the future expectation of how they have to be when they're around me or in my presence? And can I just be responsible for myself and reaching for my highest? And if I can just get through that scenario, I know that from that vantage point, whatever I create from there is coming from the intention of love, compassion, openness, and I can handle it. And I usually come up with the best scenario. I usually can come up with something incredible that changes both of our trajectories. So if I can just get myself to that state, that's all I'm responsible for in that moment. I just have to get myself to the state of remembering and reaching my hand up for the higher version of me to pull me up, let me relax, have me look at the whole perspective. And from there, I pick the best scenario. I pick the best outcome. So if we have a future worry, it could be a worry, or it could be that we're anticipating or we're excited about change that might come. We're excited about the potential that might come. So you've probably heard where if you're feeling anxious, it could be excitement, it could be anticipation. It doesn't always have to be fear and worry. We can decide the thoughts that come after it. And if you want to gently guide those thoughts, you could say, perhaps this is excitement that it could be better and it could be different. And then you might hear the voice of, well, you don't want to get your hopes up. And then you say, I don't choose that voice. I choose the one that feels like expansion because I know I'm big enough to handle situations with compassion now. So, is this true? Another tool I ask, is this true? Belief checking. Follow the thought trail. Is this true? Is this actually true? Can I feel if this feels true? So, not just by thought, but by feeling. Okay. Feeling check, honesty, like being real honest with yourself. It's here for me. What is it that I can take responsibility for? If this is here for me, what is it that I can take responsibility for? What can I honestly and legitimately take responsibility for in this scenario? Right? What outcome do I truly want? I used to train conflict management, and this was like a question I kept mulling around, like with people, and we were doing conflict management, and we just kept getting into the stories, back and forth, into the stories of the conflict, into the story, but, and then eventually I was like, what is the thing that I'm feeling here? And this question just bubbled up, like, do you want a solution? Like, do you want it to be better? Or are you just too mad? Like, because if you're still mad and there's not even a part of you that is holding space for it to get better, that's fine. Don't beat yourself up over it. But let's be honest about where we're at, because if we don't really want to, if we don't hold space for the better, if we say we want to find a resolution, but deep down we actually don't because we're so pissed off, we're not going to get the resolution. And that's when I really started learning about like intent being such a big thing. Like, as much as we might think we can mask intent, we can not, because it bears the fruit of the seed. The intent is in the seed, whether we like it or not. And when the fruit finally grows and bears from the plant, the intent is made known. So this is like, what are we talking here? Like 2005, like almost 20 years ago. This was like knocking at my door, thinking about it over and over again. So what outcome do I truly want? What outcome am I truly available at this point? And if the outcome is like a dirty look and a walk away, okay, be honest with yourself about it. Don't beat yourself up. We're working here. And again, this is everyday alchemy. I'm not professing that this is going to solve all world issues, but what I'm offering is the everyday ability to elevate your experience, to bump up against crunchy, crappy, stinky stuff and navigate your way through it gracefully and feel good about yourself and good about the other person, good about the scenario, whatever you can reach for, and just feel that. So, what was another one? Resentment check. Like, literally be real with yourself. Is there any resentment here? Am I harboring any resentment here? Is there any, like, knock on those doors? Is there any resentment here? For real? Is there? And then, like, history check, right? So, is there a history here that's preventing me from Did I like adequately look at my history, my triggers? Um, and what if acceptance? What if nothing changed? What if nothing changed? And what? And what? But by this point, you've really tenderized yourself. You've gone through this process quite rigorously. And by that point, when you say, what if I just had to accept it? Likely your mind has been stretched around this thing. Your emotions have been up and down the scale. You've met with your higher self and you've expanded, dilated, contracted, whatever. And you're like, yeah, I'd accept. I just accept. Like, I don't need to know that it's going to be different in the future. I actually don't need anything. I just accept. I'm complete. I accept what happened. I accept where I'm at right now. I accept it all. I'm just accepting because it makes sense. Because everything else has been worked out and massaged and tenderized, and just accept. Yes, I can do that. I can reach for that one now. And to be honest, if you can get to acceptance right away, fantastic. There are some that you can accept the moment they're happening. Yeah, I'm accepting this, whatever it is, what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's moments where something happens with your car, and would it be prudent of you to continue agonizing for weeks, months, and years? Or like for me, I don't know why, car stuff, it's just easy to be like, yeah, yeah. I think probably because as a late teen, early 20er, I ran out of gas a few times, like just not being oblivious to the gas in my tank, and like, oh, just I can fit one more thing in, similar to the way I am with time, I suppose. Like, oh, I'll do 5, 10 more things as I'm on my way out the door. Let me grab a couple of things because I might take the bottles back to the store. I might get some more milk while I'm there. I might whatever, just shove a bunch of stuff in at the last minute. And that's the way I was with my gas tank. So I very quickly made peace with shit. Well, this happened, I guess. So certain things are very easy. Certain things are not, obviously. And that's the work. Identifying what's easy for me to deal with, what's not easy for me to deal with. Can I elevate this now? Do I need to bring this into my future? Is this something I want to dig in on? Is there gold here? And if there is, do I have the energy and ambition to pull it out at this point? So I say all this with love. This was a very fruitful experience. And again, I want to remind you, it doesn't have to be exhausting. It can actually be enjoyable. Like, as soon as I start turning the questions inward and what's here for me, and I get over the initial hump, when I reach my hand up and I sit with my higher self and I dilate and relax, then things feel really good. Then I start to feel reverence flood me. Then I start to feel grace. Then I start to feel compassion. Then I start to feel all the good feelings of being human. All the reasons why we come here to be human, they flood me, and I feel good, and I feel like anything's possible. And then I'm reminded of the grace that exists here and the benevolence that exists as a backing track. And I'm like, shoot, this is why I do this. Absolutely. And sometimes I just stay in that space because it feels so good. Sometimes I don't have time. And there are times where I can move through this pretty quickly, like seconds, like 1 minute. So this isn't something that takes forever. But once you know your zones and don't get too comfortable. Once you know your zones, don't get too comfortable. No, but remember to be at your edges, play at your edges. Remember to ask yourself the truth. Remember to be truthful with yourself, because that investment always pays back gold. So that's the Everyday Alchemy procedure that I've been practicing for quite some time now, and it's only getting more and more refined. It's only getting more and more elegant for me. It's only bringing me more fruits, more gold. I'll tell you, in terms of spiritual wealth, oof, jewels, diamonds, rubies, gold, it's all there. So if anything, I hope this helps you go through your process. I hope you see yourself in this story. I hope you feel accepted. I hope you take it lightly with a light heart and realize that we're all human. We're all figuring it out. Nobody's got a monopoly on how to do this the best. And their best wouldn't work for you anyway. So it's okay that you've got to find your way through it. And I hope this helps. Again, I'm Femist at Instagram at FEMMYST. Give me a holler. Otherwise, thank you for being here with me. I don't take for granted that you spend your time. And if you've made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. I love you from the bottom of my heart, from the top of my heart, from the highest little small space in my heart. Thank you very much.